wanted to find wholeness after coming through a really tough childhood, dealing with two incredibly avoidant parents who are in deep denial, who never affirmed him, and his siblings. I mean, we're gonna really get into this. It's a lot. So yeah, let's get to know Chris Mccandless. There was actually a movie that came out about him that Sean Penn wrote and directed. I've never seen it, never even really heard of it, called Into the Wild. But okay. So, Chris Mccandless, he was born February 12th, 1968, and in total he has about 6 siblings. His direct, sibling whom they share 2 parents, the father and the mom. Her name is Green, and she is the younger sister of Chris. Now, they are 3 years apart, and their parents are Billy's the mom, and Walt is the father. Now, this is a whole mess. Okay, first of all, Walt, I'm about to confuse Billy and Walt because they're both guy names to me. Now Walt had an entire different family at the same time that he was with Billy, and had the 2 kids, Chris and Karen. And actually they came much later. So let's paint this picture. They are living outside of Los Angeles, and Walt, he married his high school sweetheart, whose name is Marcia. Now, he and Marcia had 5 kids. I believe it is Green who was born literally within 2 months of Marcia's child. So Mr. Walt was really getting around and had these 2 women, Billy and Marcia, pregnant at the same time. I believe that they knew about each other at some point and got found out, but this was an incredibly toxic situation. So here we have one family, Marcia and her 5 kids, and then we have Billy and her 2 kids and these 2 women. But the Walt's family, kids, are living 20 minutes apart. So let's go to Marcia's household. It worked like this. He would go to his main residence, which is Marcia's home, and he would stay with them for a few weeks, 3 weeks or so, 2-3 weeks, and then he would leave Marcia's house and go to Billy's house and stay with them for a few weeks. So this, as you can imagine, it's not a very stable situation for the kids. Quite confusing and not great for the relationship. But this is what he would do. And, he was actually a very abusive man. He was both physically abusive and verbally abusive. And the kids witnessed this. In Marcia's household, he really let out his anger, I believe, in a way that he did not quite yet with Billy. He would choke her, punch her, mentally abuse her. It really got scary. And the breaking point was when this man put a pillow over Marcia's face in an attempt to smother her. that she did it. So now Walt could be with Billy full time, and he took Billy and the kids, and they moved to a town outside of Washington, D.C. Walt Mccandless, he was a consultant for NASA and other science organizations, consulting on satellite designs So he started to do the same things. He started to be physically abusive towards Billy, mentally abusive, everything. And it was so that, like, basically the kids knew that, oh no, after dinner time, it's gonna start again. There's gonna be an argument, there's gonna be a fight, there's gonna be raised voices. So their thing was, let's hurry up, clean up the dishes, and get out of the house. Like, let's just go outside and wait for this to be done. And sometimes Walt's kids would actually come and stay with them, stay with the family, for summers. Eventually, one even lived with them for a little bit, so his other kids were still very much involved. They just lived, far apart. So they witnessed this as well, how their father would treat Billy. And so Chris was very, very overprotective of his sister and always tried to, like, shield her from this level of violence. And it was so weird because at first, like, their mom was a victim of this, but then she kind of played into it as well, and that's really hard to describe it that way. But basically what would happen, it's like, if the father started to physically abuse her, the mom, they would call the kids, like, the mom would call the kids and say, kids, come look and see what your father's doing to me. And then the dad would be like, kids, come see what your mom is making me do. He always said it's like, I'm not doing this because I want to, I'm doing this because you're making me do it, which is I mean, come on. I overuse this word, but narcissist. Literally, you're making me do this. You can't take any responsibility for your own emotions and your actions. But yeah, the mom would be like, come and see what your dad's doing to me, whereas typically you wouldn't want your kids to see this. And she even said, and she said this enough that it stuck in the kids' heads, and this left a lasting trauma in Chris. Chris is her first child with Walt. She said that the only reason that I'm stuck in this marriage with your father is because I got pregnant with Chris. Can you imagine the burden that a child has to bear, hearing that his mom is being abused and that his family has to live in this house of abuse because of your existence, and there's nothing that you can do about it? They're just trapped because he was born. This is what his mom told him, and was the reason why she could never leave. I could never leave your father. Now I'm trapped because you were born. It's like, from childhood, there's a lot of things that you don't remember, but there's some things that just stay with you that can be a driving force behind your future decisions, and that just stays with you, and it affects you mentally for a very long time, unless you really do the work to heal from it. But this is something that really burdened him and pained him and stayed with him. So yeah, it was not a good situation, to say the least. Let's jump to the high school years. Now, when Chris graduated high school, his parents threw a huge graduation party for him, and one of his friends commented that, oh dude, you're so lucky, your parents really are so proud of you that they're throwing this huge party for you. Like, this is so cool, this is, you're very lucky. And it was very strange for his friend, because he noticed, Chris's response to that was something to the effect of, it doesn't matter what they do, too little, too late, damage is done, like irreparable damage. Like, it's done, like, with him and his parents, and the friend didn't quite understand this. I'm going to jump to Kareen now, and when Kareen was in high school, I think that she was towards the end of high school, she went out with a boyfriend, and she came in at night. Chris wasn't there, and the mom was away at a Maryland beach house. And when she she could even, step over the threshold of the door to enter the house. Here's Walt. I don't know if he was drunk or something. I think he was probably drunk. Not that it's an excuse, but I think he was drunk. He just looked so angry. He was like pissed off at the fact that she came home at a certain time at night. And he's like, where have you been? What are you doing? Whatever. She couldn't even feel the ground anymore because he had her up by her neck and at her collar, lifted her up off the ground and slammed her against the wall. Her feet are not even touching the floor. Can you imagine how scary this is? So scary. And she's like, I was just, with friends or whatever, like, just that, where she was. I mean, she was terrified. And he literally called her, you lying effing B-word. She called her mom that night after this incident. And, no, he could just called her, like, the effing B-word. And then she called her mom and told her mom what happened with her dad. And her mom just, like, casually said, oh, you're a lying B-word. I mean, disgusting. It's so sad because you look to your parents to protect you, and when they're the ones that you fear and need protection from, and they're the only ones that you have, it does something to you psychologically. It really does. So that happened. Now, after high school, the father says, oh, Chris was an entrepreneur. He actually loved money before he hated it. The dad is delusional. The mom is a basket case. And they are just in such deep denial about the pain that their kids went through because of them. Chris never loved money. Now, the reason why he said, oh, Chris loved money as an entrepreneur is because Chris got a job as like a door-to-door salesman selling some kitchen stuff. I'm not exactly sure what he was selling, but door-to-door sales, which is not an easy job to do. You get a lot of rejection, but he kept doing it, and he was able to save up to $8,000, which was really impressive, especially for, a young guy. He just had a lot of drive and a lot of motivation, and the dad thought that, oh yeah, he's just like making money, good, good for him. But Chris, Mccandless was making money so that he could do a trial, so that he could, actually buy his car. It's called like a Dodson car. Never heard of it, but like an old car or truck, I think. So anyways, he got this, and he really loved it. His mom took him, and the dad was like so proud, like, oh, the mom went with him, but she didn't help him financially. He took care of it financially, but she went there to help him with the sale of the car and like whatever. He just seemed so materialistic, like it was everything that Chris didn't like. But he got this car, and the reason why I felt like he did a test trial before he actually really went away is because for about a month or so he had no contact with his parents, and he just did like a road trip across the country. And the parents like tried to get in contact with him or whatever. Now he came back, and it was for his college graduation. The dad thought that, oh, just teenagers, they like rebel, or sometimes they stick with their parents and sometimes they don't. Just totally disconnected to any truth at all. So he came back, and they had like a nice graduation dinner for him, and Chris told his sister like, I'm done with my parents, I'm divorcing my parents, I will go along with it, I will keep up this act of whatever they are doing. If you like, okay, I'll keep up this act and act like, I agree with them, that I'm softening, that I'm, coming closer to them, and then I will just one day cut all contact off. I will be done with them forever. They are delusional, and there is no coming back for them. They're just trapped in this delusion, and they are beyond saving. And I'll tell you why. Because before this dinner, the basically wrote down how he felt about his childhood and how his parents affected him and what he saw. And he put all of his emotions out there, which took a lot of courage to do. And he sent them this long letter. And you know what he got back? A postcard from the ski resort. And the line on the postcard was, "Thank you for your letter, exclamation point. We'll save this for your future children." He said, "I'm done." He said, "I am done. There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than knowing the truth of how someone or situation has affected you emotionally and mentally, and the pain that was inflicted, and the person just wanting to skip past it or act like it didn't happen, but you hold on to that pain and you're expected to just get over it or act like, you know, it's a new day." It's completely dismissive, and you just can't do that. You just can't go to, "Oh, let's be happy now." You have to confront the problem. You have to talk about it. You have to take accountability and take some vulnerability, and the parents could not do it. And it literally, it was the worst feeling for Chris. Okay? The worst feeling ever, and he was over it. So right around this time, it was like his junior year in college, and he really began to have a deep, deep disdain for money. I think that he associated his father's wealth and success with just like total emptiness and no meaning, and just everything's for show, but so empty on the inside. And he hated money, and he told his sisters, "Do not accept any money from these people." He actually gave away his school fund of about $24,000 to a charity, and the parents offered to buy him a new car for his college graduation, and he refused. And the mom in this interview was like chuckling, like, "We were insulted that he didn't accept the money. I mean, we wanted him to get rid of this Dodson car." It didn't seem, hearing them speak about their son, his life, they took no responsibility. They barely seemed sad at all. The mom was like chuckling through. I think a part of me could look at it and judge it and be like, "What's wrong with you? Like, fools." The other side, I really see like deep pain, and for that deep pain, the more you avoid it, you don't have to deal with it, because I think if they did face it head on and take full responsibility, it would probably break them. So if they just have to like, I'm trying to make sense of this, because the mom barely had any emotion. She like smiled and like talking about, oh well, I'll get to it later because I'm jumping ahead. But just the way like you think that there would be some emotion, it was like nothing. It's like they were just thinking about this old happy memory. So anyways, he didn't want their money, he didn't want a new car. And for Mother's Day, it was the last time that they saw him, and he drove them to the airport. I think he like insisted on driving them to the airport and for some trip that they were doing. And he went back to his apartment, emptied out everything. So when the parents got back and and they went to try to find him, his apartment was totally empty, nothing that they could find, nothing to trace him with. And he took his car and he traveled across the country. I think he ended up in, where did he end up? He drove from Atlanta to Arizona, but there was this flash flood that flooded his car, and so his car couldn't run anymore. So then he buried his ID and his driver's license, so no tracking him, and he started to like hitchhike. He was just like sitting on the side of the road, and this lady like pulled over and was like, "What are you doing? Where are you going?" And he said something like, "I just want to ride somewhere." And she was like, "Well, you're the laziest hitchhiker I've ever seen. You're never gonna get a ride. Just sitting on the side of the street she lived in this like desert looking commune called Slab City, and over a period of 2 years he would go off and do his own thing, but he would always come back. And it was actually kind of interesting because she had a son herself, a couple years younger than him, and she hadn't seen her son in a while. They were kind of estranged. He was 18 years old and living his life, and here we have Chris, who's totally disconnected from his own parents. In a way, they kind of filled that void for each other, just like connecting. And it was like, not his mom, but they just really became best friends. And she made a point to say, like, he opened himself up to people, but he never gave himself to anybody, like never let anybody get that close to him. But he let her get close to him, like talking about things in his family life and his upbringing and his childhood traumas and his pain and his anger towards his father. Now the thing with his sister, he was so close to his sister, but he didn't even like communicate with his sister. Looking back on it now, it's because I think it would have just been too painful, and I think that he just wanted to escape everything. And he actually wrote to her, he said, "I'm leaving, and hopefully with me being gone, the parents, our parents will treat you with the respect they'll see value in you as their child. Hopefully they can learn something from this," which actually never happened, which is sad, but that's his parents. And then anyways, from there he really made a plan to want to go to Alaska. It was just where he really wanted to go. They said he would like canoe to Mexico. He worked at McDonald's. He would like sleep in caves. I mean, Jesus, this is so scary, but I think that he just wanted to find, you know what it was? It's because in his childhood, when he was out in nature, nothing could be hidden. Everything just had to live and be, whereas inside his home, it was destruction, it was pain, it was chaotic, it was empty. So out there in nature, he just felt free, and he felt closer to being his true self without the burden of his existence and how it caused pain for his family. So anyhow, he actually, I think like a buddy of his offered to just buy him like a plane ticket to Alaska, and he refused. He didn't want a plane ticket. He wanted to like take the train and a boat and like be, be very adventurous with it. And he took a bus when he got to Alaska. He finally got there. I don't know if I remember everything like spot on, but he got a bus there, and then he found this old mining trail. Now on this road, I think it's the last time that anybody saw him. And he took like a bunch of pictures out there. And anyways, he found this old mining trail, and he followed it 3 days, 3 nights in the cold. He had like a shotgun and like some stuff with him. Survival, he didn't want to carry more than I believe like 5 pounds of rice. for so long, he started to miss home. He missed people and his family and life. And because he loved life so much, they actually described it as he was like an extremist, like people go to the edge but don't want to fall into the abyss, push it to the limit, but I want to still survive this, you know. That basically described him. And so he left the bus and he went to the river. Now he couldn't cross the river, it was way too big. He would have just been pushed down the stream. I mean, there was no way to cross it. He didn't know that a little bit up the river, if he just kept walking some few miles, I think, there was a way for him to cross. And he was only about 30 miles or so from the town people. But they had no idea that he was there, and he had no idea that the town was, you know, there. I mean, it was just unfortunate that he could have gotten back, but didn't know. And nobody knew where he was. He hadn't seen his family in 2 years. And so he had to turn around and go back to the bus. And then we see him right like he's scared and lonely, or hungry and lonely. And he came to peace with the fact that he may never leave that place. And on his last entry, he wrote something like, you know, farewell, and, you know, I don't know, he wrote like, oh, actually before this, he actually wrote SOS, help me, on the bus, so you can really see that he really wanted to get back home. He just couldn't. But yeah, he seemed to like say goodbye and come to peace with this, and I think he even wrote on the bus like, live while you can, pretty much. Makes me sad to say this, and, you know, as I'm thinking about it. And his mom said that he actually passed away in his sleeping bag that he had since he was a child, and she had no idea that he kept it. But like, as she was saying this, she like was like chuckling like it's a happy memory. And I'm not trying to say that she's like cold or insensitive, or I think she's just a deeply disconnected, deeply wounded person. I don't think that his parents are bad people. I just think it's too much for them to face, and people have like mechanisms to protect themselves mentally in order to get through life, because otherwise it would just be too much. And that's not trying to like give an excuse, but trying to just understand the psychology behind it, because it's just too painful. And it's unfortunate, because the sister actually thought that, okay, when they got news that he died, because like some hikers or hunters came across him, when they got news of this, she thought that maybe this would teach her parents a lesson, that they would grow from this, that they would be better people and do better. But it didn't work. It didn't change them at all. They are who they are. And actually none of the siblings talk to the parents now. They don't have a relationship with the parents. And it's for good measure. It's to protect themselves, and they slowly came to it one by one to distance themselves, because you can't just. The mom said, oh, seeing him write, they said he wanted to come home like family happiness, like he would just, you know, he could just come home and turn the page and just be happy. Like I said earlier, you can't do that. You can't just be happy without facing the problem. And they never understood that. They still, even after his death, live in a delusion. The father's like, this is a rubbish, a story that he went out there to escape his childhood memories and trauma because of our relationship and the family. It wasn't even bad. Like, this is what the father is saying. Like, he just did that because he was adventurous. It's nothing to do with his childhood. Like, completely disconnected from the reality of the situation and everything that he tried to say that he said himself. It's empty. It's truly empty. And the good thing about this is that the siblings, they have each other. They actually said that when the parents would fight, they would hide like in the closet, or they would go under the table, and they wouldn't just be alone, they would be together. Power in numbers, and they would keep each other safe. And I think that is heartbreaking, but amazing that they had that bond, because in a lot of cases, growing up in a household like that, it can just cause a lot of separation, unfortunately. But they came together and they supported each other. They were on each other's team and tried to protect each other as much as possible, which at least they had each other if they couldn't have their parents. I guess I pray that he found peace. That's it. What a beautiful soul. And a sensitive soul that he just gave up everything just to find that peace, is how I look at it. The peace that he couldn't get where he came from, you know. Anyhow, guys, thank you so much for watching this again.